We're just connecting everybody to our monthly meeting.
Right. Yes, ready.
Marvellous. Thank you, Wayne. Asmalia, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the beautiful Maniatoto, and I hope you all enjoyed the very scenic drive to get here. Councillor McPherson is going to lead us off with a country.
Hutia Tarito, Te Harakiki. Kai hea te kamako eko. Kai mai, kai aho, iha te mea nui, I haha te mea nui a teo. Mā ko e ki atu. I tangata, he tangata, he tangata hei. If you pluck the heart of the flax bush, where will the bellbird perch? What is the most important thing in the world? I tell you, it's people, people, people. Kia ora.
Sure. Thank you, Martin. Now, we have no apologies today, which is neat to have a full complement here. So we can head straight into our public forum. And the first people who will be joining us online is, good morning, welcome Edward Allison and Sandra McIntyre from Ngāi Tapu.
Kia ora, Morena, can you see and hear us, me?
Yes, we can hear you, and yes, we can see you as well now, Edward. Good morning.
Oh, well. Tēnā rā koutou katoa, ngā mihi atu, kia koe koromatua me koutou ngā kai kaunihera me ngā kai mahi, koutou katoa. So greetings and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning in the public forum and on the subject, of course, that we are referring to here is the manuhere kia and the false dam. I'm not sure of the time slot, but this might take 5 or more so minutes. Is that okay?
Yes, that would be perfect. Thank you.
And thank you to Chief Executive Peter talking to Ngā Manu Runaka last week, briefing us on the proposed private members bill and on what we're talking to now. First of all, of course, as you will know, Kei Tahu have a long and enduring relationship with the Manuhere Kia River and of course have been concerned with the ongoing depletion of the river. It is an important part of our traditional and extensive mahikakai network. We have many trails and leading inland and back out to the coast. It's a linkage, key linkage to the way our people traverse the landscape, and of course the manuhere kia was a very important food source for our people, both to go in there and gather kai, but also to sustain them on their journeys through that territory. So it linked, to further inland and of course in those areas, including where you are now, the Maniatoto on the way in. We have been very involved in the process of assisting with the setting of a sustainable flow regime for the river. We have been tracking the slow progress of converting the deemed permits under the RMA Act 1991 to convert them to resource consents, and notably that was not achieved uniformly, and the regional council has endeavoured to fulfil that function, but it has struggled to complete that task. But essentially, to convert the deemed permits to resource consents that meet the purpose of the RMA Act, which is to promote the sustainable management of natural and physical resources. Significantly more time and money has been spent on scientific investigation and consultation on flow setting for the Manuhere Kia River than any other river in Otago. We would be concerned if this work was to be undermined or overturned by an unconnected process. We note the paper before Council does not provide an accurate picture of the background and context, i.e. the minimum flow section doesn't include the full history, context around the different recommended limits. Inclusion of the earlier CODC economic analysis without other reports produced by ORC and OCAR places the focus on economics rather than the needs of the river. The economics report acknowledges its limited analysis and does not consider all the costs and benefits of the different minimum flows or adaptation of farming practice. Reference to the Waimea Dam local bill example did not involve setting environmental limits or minimum flows. They are very different situations. The flow setting component in the current proposal makes this proposal more complex, i.e. the Manuhere Care proposal, and so the use of the Waimea Dam example leads to underestimating the cost, time, and likely level of debate for the proposed bill. The proposal for a local bill to set minimum flows is a highly unusual approach that carries significant risks which are not identified in the paper that is before Council. The risk of setting and administering flows in isolation, the minimum flows would sit outside any regional plan policy and rule framework or the national policy statement for freshwater management. This shifts them out of established resource management system and creates legal, practical, and governance risks. Consenting. If the minimum flows sit outside a regional plan, how do they apply to consent decision making? This creates legal ambiguity, possibly increasing appeals and delays in consenting. Monitoring and enforcement, who would be responsible for monitoring and enforcing the limits? CODC does not have the technical systems or capability for flow monitoring. There is a risk of duplicating regional monitoring systems and problems in integrating limits into resource consent processes. In respect of planning framework, the inconsistency there, the limits may conflict with future regional plans or national direction, creating duplication or inconsistency. In terms of risk of challenge and the council stepping outside of jurisdiction, the function for setting minimum flows clearly sits with regional councils in the RMA and in the replacement legislation. CODC could be considered as overstepping its jurisdiction and subject to legal challenge. The risk of a decision that is not robust and not supported by science is made as a result of political lobbying rather than expert evidence. So we ask what expertise will be involved in developing the council recommendation on flow levels and the level of expertise that sits within our ORC, not CODC.
Thank you. Edward, we're just about at the end of your time, so sorry, we don't want to rush you, but have you got some final comments in this space?
Well, we want to ensure community-wide and iwi engagement through the process and concerned that alternative ways to address this issue have not been considered. So I think that I can wrap up there, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. And I see Paulette and Sandra have joined online as well. So I also appreciate you joining. We anticipate getting to that discussion at around about 2:25 this afternoon, and you will be able to watch that live online if you like.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk this morning.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Edward.
Thanks, Tama.
And next up, also.
And I'm here to represent Alex Doreen, my son, and his partner. And it's regarding the freeholding of a council leasehold property that they own, a lifestyle property at 3 on Mundubson Road, Alexandra. And apologies for Alex and Stevie, they couldn't make it here today. They've got a wedding on Friday and they've got a few other things going on, so, yep. Anyway, just following on from the last time I spoke to the council regarding this proposal, we appear to have come to an impasse over the freeholding of the property. After the last meeting, the council agreed to the freeholding of a lesser area of the property. The council retaining some land up in the terrace that adjoins the airport next to the hangar precinct up there. And that's probably the best bit of land and the best building site on the property. So the council agreed to the freeholding proposal of a lesser area. The council retaining approximately 2.8 hectares, leaving approximately 4 hectares to be freeholded. So since the council agreed to freehold that lesser area, both parties have had valuations undertaken or registered values. And there's a substantial difference between the two valuations, with the council valuation coming in nearly just under 50% above our valuations. So we've had two valuations done by registered valuers. So there's a couple of points that I'd like to raise regarding the council valuation. That firstly, under the current district plan, the property could be subdivided into 3 blocks. It's got an average 2 hectares, so there's potential for subdivision of the blocks in the block itself, and that comes into the valuation. We believe we've left the best block with the council up on top there, and the valuation that was done for the whole block was only reduced by 175,000, taking out that piece of land, leaving potential for 2 other blocks down the bottom, but they were valued at 360,000. So it's quite a difference between those. We think the land should be at the top, should be valued at the same rate as down the bottom. And secondly, in the council valuation, there's been no allowance made for the leasehold interest in the land. And just to explain a wee bit about that, the lease it's a 21-year lease with a perpetual right of renewal, and it's got 5 years to run on the current term, and the land can only be sold to the lessee. So, and based on the current rental, the return to the council is about 1.1%, and the current market rental for a property such as this is probably around 3.5 to 4%. So this means the property is under rented at say 2.5% for the next 5 years, which is a cost to the council and a benefit to the lessee, which is the lessee's interest in that land. And we believe that this needs to be accounted for in the valuation, and it hasn't been taken into account in the council valuation. I've spoken to a couple of other registered valuers, and they've stated that the lessee's interest should be accounted for the value of leasehold land for freeholding purposes. And the council have previously stated that there may have been a need for a mediation or arbitration in this process if the valuers don't agree, and there's certainly quite a large discrepancy there. So, but in the meantime, I've had a letter from the council stating that if we don't accept the council valuation, the matter is at an end. So, which to us means that we're sort of being denied the due process to come to a fair value. So we believe there needs to be a mediation or an arbitration process to resolve that issue to do with the valuation and the lessee's interest, and whereby that decision by an independent mediator or arbitrator binding on both parties. I understand that the Vincent Community Board were given the opportunity to give their opinion on the issue, but not being privy to the outcome of any recommendation they may have arrived at. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions at this point? I appreciate you coming in representing Alex and Stevie as well.
Thank you very much.
And then next up in our very busy public forum this morning, we have Duncan Ford and Kirsten Adams Ford.
Morning. Worship councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. We are obviously Kirsten Adams Ford and Duncan Ford of 7 Hall Road, Aotearoa. We are here to advise of our concerns about the possibility of a gold mining operation at 1675 Maniatola Road by Pat Brim Limited, our immediate neighbour. We were approached on 9th of January this year by the director of the company, Mr. Peter Jobson. He advised us he was going to be applying for CODC for RMA permission to mine his land for the next 10 years and wish for us to sign our approval for the activities based on his application for resource consent document that he gave us. He's handpicked half a dozen properties whom he believes are affected parties to the activities. We actually believe the entire village could be deemed as an affected party given the nature and location of the operation. The particular parcel of land for the proposed mining lies within the 50-kilometre zone at Aotearoa. It would use a floating recovery plant method. Mr. Jobson emailed us a copy of the application document and advised us we had 10 days in which to sign. We replied a week later with areas of concern and to date have not had a response addressing those concerns. Items which we brought to his attention included that there was a cropped aerial photograph of the property taken many years ago on which at least 4 residential homes were missing. He made a statement that he lives on the property and he does not. Statement that noise from the operation would decay within 100 metres of the plant and would be 50 to 60 decibels total output. The document states that the activities thought would be part-time in nature. However, he verbally told us he would start at 7 to 7:30 in the morning and will go through to about 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Unfortunately, the document is lacking in detail, but it stated that plant could operate Monday to Saturday, which means it could be up to 60 hours a week. Subsequently, we have heard a wide variation on times being mentioned to others in the community, ranging from I'd only do 9 till 3, or I can only manage to work 4 hours a day. It's too boring to do anymore. So there's a variety of information out there. Mr. Jobson has not responded to a request for the appendices to the application, one of which was in the hydrology report, which we have a big interest in. And looking for information about where this sits with the RMA. The RMA, as you all know, sets rules and requirements to manage activities ranging from building houses, clearing vegetation, moving earth to taking water from a stream. Its purpose is to ensure activities won't harm our neighbours or community or damage the air, water, soil and ecosystems that we and future generations need to survive. Our focus is on this last sentence. Major concerns about this proposal are noise. So our research has indicated that the output of noise from this type of plant is likely to be well above the stated 50 to 60 decibels. We contacted a company who makes this equipment and completely unprompted, their comment was this type of plant is very noisy. Comment in the document that the noise would decay and be barely audible is absolutely questionable. Items that could create noise include a large excavator, a generator, a pump, gravels going into the hopper of the trommel and then being mixed around inside the trommel, gravels being dropped from a height off an elevator onto gravel piles and additional truck movements. Dust is another concern. It's possible that dust outputs, none of which are mentioned in the document, could include arsenic, iron oxide, gypsum, pyrite, and even possibly silica. The proposal mentions dust suppression, but not the source of water to do this. and dust would be present during the entire mining process as well as at the point of future remediation of the land. We are also concerned about possible effects on the Salburn River and downstream of it. What could the effects of noise, vibration, and possible contamination in the river be on native fish and galaxids, and obviously introduced species as well? We are awaiting on information from Fish and Game as well in that regard. Whilst we have many concerns, as much for all residents as for ourselves, the sound produced is a major one given the nature of how sound travels in this region. On a day of clear conditions or night, we've heard milk tankers leaving 5 kilometres and hear vehicles coming up the ramp, Tarangaroa Road, while standing at the bowling club, and you can't see a vehicle on that straight. You can hear small equipment running in the village, for example, a digger or a chainsaw, or even a dog barking, and be 2 kilometres up the Salburn River track. The valley gradually rises from the Tairi River, and as that natural elevation occurs, so does the ability for sound to travel. Noise, particularly that of a non-natural cause, affects people in many different ways. Consistent low-grade industrial type noise of a non-rural nature, thus an unexpected one in context of this natural environment, can result in depression, stress and anxiety, sleep disorders, cardiovascular issues, and a general overall reduction in health and well-being. Since this proposal came to light, we've had discussions with many people, residents and cribbies alike, as to why people come to Pahiaroa. Without exception, the number one comment is that people came here for the peace, tranquility, and the hidden jewel nature of the village and the region. And this is also our why. Most people are dismayed to learn of the proposal, with many asking why. As we are finding, due to the fact that only certain homeowners were selected to receive the applicant's document, not all in the village are currently aware of this proposal. We know a mining permit has been granted on the property, however, that we understand that this is a pay the fee and it's granted process, not a given right to mine. We are looking to the council to deliver a process when the application is made, which aligns with the sentence from the RMA, which is to ensure that the activities won't harm our neighbours or community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. Has anybody got any questions? And I just note you did cover it at the very end for anybody who's watching online, was that council has not yet received any applications. So as of today. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of our public forum, and we head now over to our agenda to confirm the minutes from last month, please. They begin on page 5. If somebody happy, thank you, Tracy, and seconded, thank you, Sarah. And those in favour, against, carried. Declarations of interest begin on page 21. Is anything that you need to add or amend or note, Bob?
I'm just going to know that I'm going to stand aside for 26.35 today.
3.5. Oh, the Cromwell, of course, yeah.
And I'm standing aside from 26.33.
26.33.
Paul.
Thank you, Martin. When you're ready, Wayne, I will also be aside for 26.33. And
I'm standing aside from 26.3.15.
and I am as well. We don't usually have this.
23, don't you? You mean 23?
23, that's cool. Because that's,
26.23.
we're going to endorse that.
You're not
We're not standing
I'll
aside.
stand.
No, I'll just hang around.
Some of you might as well stay at home.
We need to wait chat about them before we endorse it. It's a bit late now. It's
Yeah.
good to have some. Yeah, sorry. Move down one.
Thank you. Now that we've covered that up, don't usually have so many declarations. I think it just goes to show the variety of the agenda today. And first up, we would usually have a community board chair update, but Mark Harris is not available, so he has sent someone better. Welcome, Logan Dowling from the Money and Social Community Board.
Most capable, most capable.
There's an endorsement.
That's debatable.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Thanks for the invitation to speak. Mark Harris sends his apologies, he's couldn't make it. So I'm Logan Dowling, first term on the community board. And I was talking to when Sarah asked me if I wanted to speak. She said, just give us a brief overview of what you've been doing. So I'll sought advice from Councillor Stu Duncan, and he said, say whatever you want for as long as you want. Stu's advice on this one, but it's been interesting getting into the community board and just seeing the scope and breadth of work that goes on. It's only a small window I've seen to date, but there is a lot happens clearly, whether it be cemeteries or roading or playgrounds, all which we've covered since November. Staff have been great, especially when I mentioned Sarah and QP for answering all my probably very basic, simple questions, but they always take the time to get back to me, which is much appreciated. We had a strategy session pre-Christmas with the board, and it was actually interesting and pleasing just how aligned we all were with what we felt was important to the area and what the future might look like. We're into a change of season. Summer has been, well, it's been great if you're a farmer, not so good if you're a camper. But the shop's been busy, the rail trail's been busy, the local contractors who employ a lot of seasonal staff have been busy, which is great to see. And along with the uptick in the rural community, there's been a lot more money getting spent locally, which is very pleasing, better than it was a few years ago. Also very pleasing was no major water restrictions, which have been a bit of an issue of this area the last few years. That's been great. The swimming pool's been well used. The parks and green spaces have been looking good. I was talking to Gordon there, but we issue at the moment, I noticed, but we'll get on to that, no doubt. Let's see. Just, it's funny being a small community. It seems like the change of season, everyone's woken up to the fact that every tiny wee club has become an incorporated society. So everyone's rushing around doing a lot of work, and it's a shame because it often falls to the same people spread over different clubs doing the heavy lifting, which I know Curtis, you'll understand that in a small area. And it's something that come up in our strategy session was the real worry around volunteer burnout in small areas. There seems to be a small group doing a lot of heavy lifting. I don't think the CODC can fix that, but it is a real risk, and these communities have been built on volunteer hours for a lot of things. I see the job of CODC as being very straightforward. It's getting more value for money, lower rates, improved services, and if possible, get the oil out of Australia almost. If you do all the above, it'd be much appreciated. But back to reality, we do face constant challenges here in isolated areas. At the moment, front of mind is the obvious ones of cost of living and cost of fuel. These are issues that affect isolated areas so quick. And I know with winter sports about to start, it's a real concern amongst families and how they're going to afford to get their kids either through to Cromwell for hockey or Queenstown for rugby, or it just bites so fast. We'd love to attract more young families to the area. We're incredibly well serviced with our healthcare and our schools and our recreational opportunities around here. And potentially with land use changes locally or further into central Otago, this may happen. I just guess the fear when you're in a small community like this, I guess it's always the same to a degree, and that's when you're part of a larger council that includes lots of your Alex and your Cromwell with so many big projects and so many exciting things happening. The risk is that you don't get heard. But I do believe we have a great advocate in Stu. He is loud and never stops talking, so good luck not hearing him. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Logan. Has anybody got any questions for Logan?
You too.
Yeah, Andrew's my first cousin.
Yeah.
Do Do you, after Ben, and this Logan was very vocal on the outside before he came to the committee, but do you have a different perspective of what we do now and the decision making we do than what before you came in?
I get an appreciation, this isn't a criticism, I get an appreciation why things don't move as fast as what you think they should. That's all. That's probably the biggest difference I see. You just think from the outside it should happen like that. But I do, when you go into policies and things, I do get to see why it doesn't always happen as fast as what you'd like. So,
As a community, and especially in that strategy session, did you guys come up with any ideas about how to, because fix isn't the right word, but facilitate less volunteer burnout? Or is that a work in progress?
I'd say it's a question going every small community. I think it's
That's what I'm
unfortunate.
asking.
Yeah. Yeah, knew the answer to that, you'd make a few dollars, I think, but no, I don't. I just see it as being a lot of probably people my age look at what their parents did and just think, I can't be bothered giving that much time up. And we've grown up with a generation where our forefathers did so much work. And I think that's might have negatively impacted some younger ones coming through that just don't see their own time as, well, I shouldn't say it's their own time being more important, but just aren't prepared to give up the same amount of time. So
Definitely going to be a challenge, and I'm pleased you noted winter sports because I think the crunch is really going to come on for that. So
that's a massive conversation here.
yeah, I'm pleased you've started it, and it's probably something that we could do across the district too, because it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Even if it's resolved tomorrow.
Oh, it's going to be enough, yeah.
It's not going to be relaxed.
Yes. Thank you very much for that exceptionally thorough update.
Well, it was
Well
very,
done.
very quick. Thank you guys.
Perfect. And the next thing that we are going to move on to is the declaration by our newest member in his hometown, which is quite exciting.
Oh, they're here with them?
Yeah, got family here, which is perfect. So I'll write it down, you just need to reach it out and then sign it, please.
I, Andrew Dowling, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interest of Central Otago the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as a member of the Central Otago District Council by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act.
Congratulations.
Long gone.
Thank you.
Got in now.
Away.
Andrew, do we happen to know your cousin texted me the other day to say that the Dowlings are the new Kennedys of local body politics? And you can pick whatever cousin you want and said that, I think you got a good idea.
Are they gun shy? That's the question.
Yeah. Gun shy.
Brilliant. We now move on to item 26.3.4, an update on the activities of Film Otago Southland, which is probably appropriate to be coming out here for that update. So please welcome Nick, Carly and George.
Perfect. I'll hand over to Carly and George very shortly to provide an update, but just to recap the report to be received, Film Otago Southland are a not-for-profit trust with the purpose of promoting film activity in Otago and Southland. It's just a fantastic example of local government collaboration with others to, enable, come together and make something happen. So they'll run through their core purposes, but as Tamer pointed out, it's great to be here in the Manitoto delivering up because this is one of the main sort of areas for filming, in the district. And
Say that again.
It's been recorded, you're right, you just moved it back.
but no, it's beautiful to
HBA, seeing exactly why film crews come from all around the world to film here. And the activity has been, the last 3 months, we've seen a lot of film activity come through the district. It's been across the district, and that's been from everywhere from big sort of Hollywood productions through to television commercials, through to clothing brands doing their photo shoots here as well. So that I'll pass on. They've got a presentation up on the screen, and they will just provide a bit of an update on the film activity, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask any questions.
Well, thanks, Nick, and Kia ora, councillors, and thank you for your time today. As Nick said, my name's George Dawes, and I'm the chair of Film Otago Southland, and I'm joined by Carly Scott, who's one of the Film Otago Southland's co-managers. And I understand that Nick has circulated a copy of our annual report for the previous year, and I think we'd just like to really touch on some highlights today. I think we can move on to the next slide, please. So, as Nick said, Film Otago Southland is a not-for-profit trust that supports screen production in Otago and Southland. Our role is to support local government and the industry to attract screen production into the region, and then support visiting productions as they navigate the local permitting process. We maintain a crew database, an industry vendor database, and a sustainability database to connect vendors and suppliers in the region with visiting production. Alongside our core business of screen production facilitation, we also facilitate workshops and courses to upskill local talent, advocate film-friendly policies and legislation, and more. Developing capacity in the region is essential to building a thriving and sustainable industry that delivers real benefit to our community. Please have the next slide, please. We work across the whole of the Otago and Southland region with funding and support from the Dunedin City Council, Queenstown Lakes District Council, Waitaki District Council, the Southern Institute of Technology, and of course the Central Otago District Council. The trust is managed by Carly and Stefan Roche, who are based at QLDC and DCC respectively. Carly and Stefan are supported by a part-time manager. Jump on to the next slide. Our mission is to facilitate a seamless filmmaking experience in Otago and Southland and enable the development of a thriving regional screen industry and support economic development of the whole community. Our work is split across 4 strategic pillars. These are advocate, support and lobby. We aim to provide a strong voice that speaks on behalf of our stakeholders and maintain strong links across the community, including councils, film officers, Department of Conservation, iwi, screen workers, service providers, and anyone who benefits from the screen industry. We work hard to ensure the region's voice is heard at a national level. Our second pillar is promote, market, attract. We work alongside stakeholders to ensure our region's unique voice and point of difference is recognised at a national and international level. Our third pillar is to enable and facilitate production. We aim to support a strong network of regional film officers that are equipped with the tools to achieve a seamless filmmaking experience that attracts repeat work into the region. Our fourth pillar is to educate, train and pathway facilitation. We want to support a strong screen community across the region and support filmmakers with workshops, grants and training and other opportunities for upskilling. Film Otago Southland direction and strategy is set by the Trust Board, which is made up of representation from our local government funders and industry members. And over to Carly.
Hello, councillors. So my name's Carly. I sit within QLDC, but then co-manage the Film Otago South work plan across the region. So wanted to take the opportunity today to highlight, sorry, just next slide there, specifically some productions that have filmed here in the Central Otago District over the last few years. I'm obviously preaching to the choir when I say that the reason the region is selected for productions that we hear from the productions about for the locations you have on offer here. So the open vistas, the historic townships, the farmland, the vineyards, even the beautiful roads. I missed that out there, but driving through today was reminded how cinematic the roads here are as well, which film productions love, and also the film-friendly communities and council that we've got here as well are also a great asset for the regional film package. If you can just click on to the next slide there. So a question we get asked a lot. I think in theory, people understand that film production does bring, an economic injection into the region and into the districts when they film here. And we're often asked about the numbers around that.
So I'll be transparent, the numbers are difficult to pin down. I have pulled some data from Infometrics, which has a screen sector profile for the Otago and Southland region as a whole, but we do believe these numbers are quite light and conservative. We're not sure if they fully capture the contribution that productions make to the ancillary industries such as accommodation and transport, which are actually quite big, especially in regions like this. But they give an idea, I suppose, of the minimum contribution, keeping in mind it's probably larger than that. So for 2025, the numbers were about $52.6 million contribution to regional GDP, around 457 jobs filled, and 183 business units based across the region working with the film industry. So those economic impacts are broken into direct impacts, which are employment and tax revenue created from screen production, indirect impacts such as that spend on goods and services such as accommodation and transport. There's also the induced impacts, which are when people employed in the industry spend their income in the region. So when productions come and they're bringing in cast and crew, they also might, go out to eat at restaurants or, take advantage of our lifestyle offerings as well on the weekend. So there's also that economic contribution. And then there's also the long tail and the spillovers, such as tourism that's generated from screen production and having the locations in our region on screen internationally. And it is estimated that screen production has an economic multiplier of approximately 2.56. So for every dollar spent, it's actually $2.56 into the local economy. So just moving on to the next slide, probably a more interesting way of looking at it is to look at a case study, probably one of the highest profile productions in recent years that has hit the screens, won awards, Oscar buzz, all that was The Power of the Dog, Jane Campion film, which filmed Out This Way. And we did get some information from the production around that in terms of the crew. About 25% of the total crew was sourced from the South Island. That's something we'd like to see increase. We would love actually for a higher percentage of the crew on the productions when they film here for it to be higher. So that's where the skills and capability come into it, sort of training up more locals so that, we can really put our best foot forward in that sense. Accommodation, that was a big one down here, 11,375 nights in the South Island. So that sort of times the amount of crew by hotel nights to give that number. And then there was quite a lot in terms of catering, so utilising the local businesses and restaurants and hotels here in the region. Extras, that's something where they're often looking to source locally. You hear great stories of locals who got to be on screen, even if just in the background on productions that film here. And then there was also quite a lot of construction work generated from building sets in the region as well. And just to note there, that productions are also becoming increasingly more sustainability focused and wanting to sort of pass on their materials that they use when they're filming in the region and, try to minimise the waste that's produced as well. And the local community is really essential to facilitating that too. Next slide, please.
Why did they buy 100 side plates?
That was explained. I think there weren't enough to in the hotel to cater for the number of crews, so they used that was just provided by the production. I think they were looking at the local tidbits, so they went to the antique shop, I think, and got the side plates.
Were they on the sideboard or something in the old house?
I
And back.
You might know. Yeah.
I was very grateful for that slide up there which showed War Machine was filmed here because I watched that last night. I went, that's filmed here, and I couldn't find it in the credits. So now you just confirmed it.
Yeah, it was a little bit. I think I haven't seen it yet. Roaring Meg. By the they needed the.
It's really good rubbish.
It does what it says on there.
Yeah.
So that's
Exactly.
So just pulled out some highlights specific to the Central Otago district from our annual report. There we go. We've got the War Machine feature film filmed here a couple of years ago, recently out on Netflix. If anyone wants to check that out. East of Eden is not out yet. We don't have a release date for that yet, but that also filmed here. When was that? Wasn't it? Yeah. Very similar sort of location package to Power of the Dog. So it's almost like that's getting an international profile of that trifecta between Dunedin, Oamaru and Central Otago. It's a really great package for locations for productions. I'm conscious this is public, so there was an international feature film that filmed earlier this year too, which I can't share the details of. People may or may not know. It gets easier for us to share details publicly when they're starting to promote production itself. So hopefully we'll have more information to share about that soon. And TV commercials are kind of always coming through as well. So there's been recent significant ones for Jetstar and One New Zealand. We've also been running these events roughly every second year with Business South, specifically in the district in Clyde, to bring the local business community together with the film community, because it's really important to know kind of what businesses are out there that have services that the industry might be looking to bring on board, and kind of understand the weird and wonderful requests of the industry, because you think you know everything and then they come along and they ask for something that you didn't expect. So it's always really good to know who's out there who has, services that the industry might be interested in knowing about. And I want to give a shout out to the ongoing film friendly policy that Central Otago District Council commits to. So we always hear that it's streamlined and easy to film here, and that's fantastic to be able to say to productions. Obviously kind of having the policies and processes in place so that the community is taken into account, but that it's also streamlined for productions. And then just highlighting that we also maintain a number of cross-regional resources like our crew directory, accommodation directory, location directory, and sustainable filming directory, which is region-wide. So they're on our website if anyone wants to check them out. If you think there's something from around here that's missing, that would be useful for us to know about, then we want those to be really comprehensive resources for the industry to tap into. Is that the end of my update?
Capacity building.
Oh, capacity building, sorry. I'll quickly run through that. Next slide. So these are just some cross-regional capacity building highlights as well. So we've got Regional Filmmakers Collective, which is focused on the creative aspect of our filmmaking community. So people based locally who actually want to be making their own content rather than working on external content. So trying to nurture that local filmmaking community as well. We've recently partnered on Documentary Accelerator. I think there's real opportunity for more documentary and actual filmmaking in the region. We have an ongoing Screenwriters in Residence program that welcomes visiting screenwriters into the region if they've got a project that's based here, to help them develop those. We are conscious that a lot of opportunities still are based up north, so we also offer travel grants to enable regional film practitioners to travel up north to the opportunities that we don't have down here. Providing support for onset training to help train up our crew base, and we also work with the National Screen Guilds to help with that regional capacity building as well.
Yeah, so look, hope the presentation has given you an idea of the work that Film Otago South does, and it is, a wide and varied program of work, but it is focused on a key mission of supporting growing screen opportunities in the region. And look, councillors, I'd like to thank you for your time again. And I think it's important to acknowledge not just the financial support that the council provides to Film Otago South, but also the work that Nick's team in council does to facilitate filming in the region. This area is known as being particularly film friendly, which is really, really helpful. And many thanks. I'm really happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing when the film industry comes to town for the community, because everyone gets a lift out of it. And you look at it, and Mason out there does sounds, and young people get involved in arts or music or the stage, and a lot of the oldies and extras, like we've had Easter Eden at Tamar. I took Tamar up to Easter Eden because at his meeting we managed to get on set, talk to the producer, and how the dog was saying it really got a lift, and a lot of people got those extra jobs, and they all start chatting about how great it is and how much fun, because it just brings a new lease of life. So, and it's, some of the filming around here is spectacular when you see the Hawkmans at their best. So, I'm pleased that we're council friendly to do business with, because I think that's where we should be. And the question to the producer of Easter Eden is what can we do to help, was the question had. And one of the biggest fears they had was a lack of accommodation near set, a lot of travelling. And as you probably come out here from Alexandra or Cromwell or wherever you've come from today, it's a long way away to start carting trucks and people and stuff. So, but it is a really good thing, because I think people who never thought they'd be making movies or being extras or helping on security or doing the plantings and all that, and the contractors got a real big lift at the time where things weren't fantastic in their own environment. So I think it's a great industry and we should really be promoting it, definitely.
That's a great point. And I think film productions really value coming to places where there is a strong sense of local community, because it is easy then to solve problems. And filmmaking is all about solving problems. So when somewhere becomes known as being a great filming location, it's often the people that are there that make it happen as well.
Well, they embrace it here.
That's really valuable.
You know, the people, they will talk about having social functions and doing things in the community. They fit in, they go to the pub. Oh, you with the film of East Eden or Power of the Dog, and they just become a part of the community, drop in and they just disappear. And someone will come back the next movie. But it's great.
About the range of jobs that the film industry offers as well. Carly's got a great slide that you present to the schools in terms of the film requires accountants and it requires construction. Like it goes right across all the sectors. So it's great if we're giving that sort of variety, I guess, of opportunities.
And loads of variety of things that you wouldn't think of.
Yes.
I've got a friend in Oamaru who specialises in fall arrest for filming from height and has a company that provides that for film studios. So all these sort of, it's not just about feeding them and giving them somewhere to stay. Yeah. I think it's because we're so friendly, and also when someone famous comes, we say,
Oh,
but we don't approach them. So they're probably quite
recognise famous people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to get Curtis's number.
I was good friends with Phil and Burton, who were originally owned Blackridge, and watching under the blinds in that house, which I've spent many nights in there, it was quite pleasing, you know, watching other people stumble down those stairs as they happen.
The recommendation on page 28 is that the report be received and its contents noted. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Martin, and a seconder. Thank you, Charlie. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much for coming out here, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the hospitality of Ranfurly before you get back.
See that spectacular film cast. What's that?
Heading on to page 74, please, where we will be talking about Cromwell Golf Club request to authorise building alterations and improvements on reserved land. Bob is going to leave us and then get a bite to eat and or something. Yeah, was camera in public. Yeah. Welcome, property team, reserves team extraordinaire. Regale us with the Cromwell Golf Course.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of the report is just to get Ministry of Conservation approval in terms of the delegated authority for the improvements that they want to make. It's all, I think the report is read, basically an increase to the building footprint for allowing for a new kitchen area, new pro shop, and a deck extension as well. We also recommend, as per recommendation C, that we include a variation of the original lease to include, because these are very old leases, they didn't make provision for the removal of improvements. That's a normal standard clause now in our leases, just to cover council should the lease end for all these improvements to be either removed or council take it over in certain circumstances. So I'll just present the recommendations as noted, please.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody got any questions on it?
Yeah, one question. So with that item C and amending the lease, would that then bring that lease up to what you'd call a modern standard if we were constructing that lease today now?
To that extent, with regards to the improvement, yes.
And what about with the lease in any other respects and modernising it?
It won't affect anything else because legally we can't force them to change any of the other clauses.
Okay.
And we did look at, when did we look at that lease? It wasn't that long ago, was it?
Yeah, I think 18 months ago. Yeah, just has to renewed into.
Yeah, the term ends in 2044. So still got it.
We wait around. Yeah, we might not be here then.
Just a question about the delegated authority. When I'm reading this, can you tell me, so it's giving, we have a delegated authority from the minister?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, just I was reading that, so
in 2000, you used to have to go to the ministry itself. In 2013, the minister got sick of all these things and delegated to.
Imagine how many they would have got.
Yeah, yes. Okay, no, that's cool, thank you.
So recommendations there are receiving the report, approving the granting of the consent of the minister and agreeing that the consent is granted on the condition that the variation to the original lease is executed by the parties to insert that standard clause and authorising Peter to do what is necessary. Thank you, Stuart and Curtis. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right. Welcome back, Bob. Imagine what you're going to be able to buy in a bigger size pro shop.
Will it help your golf?
I think that's my goal.
Right, page 81, cemeteries bylaw is what we are. We can. I know Gordy is here. Perfect. Good to see you. Welcome, Gordy and David.
Pardon?
Yeah.
What's that? Councillor Bennett?
Waiting for a smart comment from you.
Thank you. So the councillors will recall this came before your January meeting in a draft form to go out for public consultation, and we did public consultation for a month and no submissions being received. So there was no real changes to the bylaw, the slight amendment to the handbook, which allowed us to recognise the leaves for in burials. So I'm recommending that council now adopt the 2026 cemetery bylaw and handbook. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Tracy?
I'll move.
Okay, we've got it moved and seconded, Tracy and Stu. I had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Now that we've moved and seconded, we can discuss. Very formal process. Does that then take us out to 2036 for the bylaw to be reviewed?
Yes.
And how often will we be reviewing that handbook?
Well, the handbook gets through, well, when an issue comes up or something that we can't resolve, then we don't typically do it proactively, and there's nothing to review it for, but we can do that.
Great.
That's what
We did review it not that long ago. I mean,
no, that was
this was covered, but it wasn't, it was put in place not long ago, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Within the last couple of years.
yes, as we reviewed it last time, because we took on Ettrick and Roxburgh Cemetery, so we had the handbook. Yeah.
One question, there's no area designated for natural burials.
No.
Any plan to?
No.
Our soils aren't really conducive to natural burials.
No.
The feedback was, I think, from Dear Lindley was that you would end up being mummified in the ground as opposed to naturally decomposed because there's not enough moisture in it.
I was just not rich enough for
The sheep disappear really fast. They dug up some of the cemeteries, one of the projects, moved bodies with very little left. And
yeah, so natural burials are with a metre or so, so not the
not deep.
6 foot deep. So.
Perfect. Recommend has been moved by Tracy, seconded by Stu. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Definitely so.
Cromwell. Their jokes. Cromwell Racehorse Reserve events.
So this is a recommendation for consideration from the Cromwell Community Board that council provides its consent under the lease. Council has with Central Lakes Equestrian Club to allow improvements within the reserve. The improvements are to help facilitate future events, particularly proposed wheels events next year and then for the following 4 years. So for five for 10 years, but every 2 years. That makes sense. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this one?
I'm happy to move.
Martin and Nathan, Bob. Oh, you were just moving. I thought you.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, sorry, Martin and Nathan beat you to it. I would just like to note how encouraging it was to see two groups that you would not usually think of as working together, how collaborative
Yes.
they've been through the process, because when it was first suggested, it was, quite a lot of hesitation around whether those two events could cohabitate in one location. And thank you very much to the Central Lakes Equestrian Club and to the trust that organised the Wheels event for being very open-minded to communicating with each other and following through a process alongside the Cromwell Community Board. So I think it's pretty exciting to see that something like that could come for the area through collaboration.
And I,
That's awesome.
We'll be agreeing after this, with the two groups that actually do the nuts and bolts now.
but I think it's gonna be quite an amazing thing. Like it was in Wanaka area, and there's a lot of people that are, and you've got your events now, Central Otago is becoming a really events driven place, and we get some massive crowd, and I was talking to Alan Dippy, and they're pretty keen on having it, and been involved in Central Otago in the future, so it's great.
If you're watching online, they will be looking for more volunteers, so please do feel free to reach
The
out.
old tractors will be a few then partner gallery.
Thanks. It's been moved and seconded that we receive the report and accept the level of significance, and that council provides consent under clause 5 of its lease with CLEC for the Cromwell Racecourse Reserve to be improved to host the proposed Wheels event as per the attached plan.
Excellent.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
We've got a few tractors and new golf course. Pretty fast.
We'll go. Place to go. Right, moving on to page 1, 2, 3. Welcome Gareth and Tara alongside David to talk about the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre rebuild.
I'll take the report as read, but the purpose was to consider a submission for alternate site options for the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre. After a request for proposal process, we received one submission, and that submission doesn't propose a new site as such. It offers adjacent privately owned land, approximately 1406 square metres at 130 Scotland Street for purchase. If acquired, the total site area would then increase from 2,000 square metres to approximately 3,406 square metres. The report contains quite a in-depth analysis of the submission. As an update to the report, the Teviot Valley Community Board also considered the submission last week. And I don't think the minutes have been confirmed yet, but the resolution was to recommend that council confirm approval to proceed with the design and construction of the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre on the existing site as planned. They also wanted to recommend to the council that all options for activation of the site are considered as the project progresses. And they also wanted to ensure that there is continuous feedback loop with the project steering group and Teviot Valley Community Board as the design progresses. Are there any questions?
Questions? Then I'll go to Curtis and Martin, whether you've got comments that you'd like to add.
Yeah, it was discussed last week. This investigation or this report wasn't brought back through the steering group for feedback. So the opinion of the steering group and the community board is that there are some assumptions that were made that lack a degree of flexibility about each option. That being said, in my opinion and the community board's opinion, after much discussion, was this project needs a definitive direction. The community, we have given sufficient time and thought, and given sufficient time and opportunity for alternative sites to present themselves. So I'm happy that we are on the right path with option 1 as per the community board recommendation. The reason why we at community board didn't go with option 3 is that point earlier about clarity on the project. I think having an option 3 where you're looking at a stage 2 development would influence and muddle your thinking on the ins and outs on the original building as you progress. So we decided that, yeah, we wanted clarity and a definitive direction on the project, which is why we chose option 1. But a big thing for us, and as I pointed to, the report probably missed the point around activation with option 1, is that all options for activation need to be considered, and we've had assurances from staff and so on that option 1 wouldn't preclude some form of council activation if we couldn't have a commercial activation. The other thing that was raised at the community board and one member of the steering group's raised is if we got into the design phase and it was looking like that a slither or a piece of the section next door would be hugely beneficial to the option one, it could possibly be entertained and wasn't ruled out definitively. So I'll just add that as comments to the report. The steering, there was, and I suppose it's just fair to point out around option 3, it was entertained at the community board a definitive timeline on option 3 for negotiations. We went back and said, right, you have 2 months to figure out a proposal with the submitter and to go into the long-term plan. So you sort of extend it, but then you have a definitive cut-off whereby in 2 months or 3 months, you know exactly where you're heading, so I just hear that as one amendment to option 3 that we did discuss, and I've had people bring it up with me since the meeting, but yeah, ultimately we went with option 1 with a few changes.
Martin.
Yeah, I agree with Curtis. I disappointed the steering group wasn't given the opportunity to have some input of this at the early stage, but I think those lessons have been learned. The Teviot Valley community want to see progress on this. We went down a path to explore options, which was the best thing we could have done because we were trying to ensure that we would future-proof this investment. And I support, what the Teviot community board has decided. And let's get now into the exciting phase, is looking what this project's going to physically look like in 3 years' time.
Is there any thought to using the land at the back of backhand side of the building there, sort of shaded in grey on the plan, to expand the building at all? Is that, I don't know what that.
That's a cut, but yeah, so we touched on that. It would require a zoning change, but yeah, we could essentially build an L-shaped building.
Yeah.
On the existing council site.
Right.
But the one proposal or the one idea that is floated is that a slither of land parallel to that on the next door section would be quite handy to widen that out.
Yeah.
And that's the piece I talk about if we got into the design phase. And
well, there's no reason why you shouldn't accept, option 1, for example.
no, we would get a bigger building than what we had if we could build on that.
Yeah.
And then, if it looked like we may need it.
And that's the next step in the process, so that when we engage with designer / architect, and then go through that public consultation process, that was being driven by our chosen developer. So their feedback coming through that consultation process may bring that into question, but we haven't excluded that as an opportunity.
No.
And I guess if I can add my personal opinion on why I wasn't a fan of option 3 at the community board level is you do get a different perspective sitting at this table, and particularly in audit and risk. A project scope, expanding the project like via option 3 to a 2-stage community hub proposal. In my view, those days, given our fiscal constraints, are gone, unfortunately, for small communities, unless we were to find all the money ourselves. So I don't see that as a financially viable option for council to be, or for us to ask council. And I don't view the likelihood of success on that being very high.
Perfect. Wayne has put up the recommendations from the Teviot Valley Community Board. Are there any other questions on that?
So with that site though, it says here that you can't co-location at other service centres.
Well, I've challenged that. That's what I challenge.
Because I guess my thinking is that the more we can have, just the way we're going and people and staff and services, and we've seen that with the libraries and the library report last at council, it was fantastic. That we can't just be one show ponies, and
I think it says in the report that it doesn't allow for that unless funded separately in the future. So it's not that it excludes it, it's just that it would need to be funded as a separate.
Why would it require to be funded separately?
Well, because it'll be additional funding required,
How?
because it'll extend the scope of the project beyond. what
See,
it
this is,
today.
I'll be pretty direct. This is the issue I have with this report is we've discussed this in private, and the project steering group as being an option. And I'm blindsided by this in the report.
They have it included in the scope.
Yes, it was always on the radar and we'd always discussed it as being a potential activation option. And it was published that it wasn't. Martin, would you add to that?
It's an option. So, but the building won't be the same as what you replace it.
Well, that's,
Well, we don't know what the building looks like. We're just
So you'd
saying,
have to get guidance of where you want to start thinking. If you're going to have it so you can put other services in there, it needs to change the way of what it was built.
So,
Yeah.
can I just explain methodology? So we're going to go out to the architect and they're going to go and get a whole lot of opinions from all different stakeholders. So they're going to consolidate all of that and come up with a brief. And then it'll be up to first the project steering group will be steering, but then to the board and then ultimately to council to adopt that brief. That would define the scope.
yes,
So whether service centre is included or not is actually irrespective. It comes up when you actually adopt the scope of that document. And that's when you'll define what's going to be going into that building or not.
yes,
So
but the
sorry,
option, yeah.
is that outside then of the insurance payout?
No, so our brief to the architect is going to say, we've got so much money out of insurance payout. This is what the building had in it originally. Go and talk to the community and see what they want. And within those parameters, that's our baseline, you start expanding on it. Because we're getting a full payout for insurance, you don't even have to build under the constraints that you have to replace like for like. So it's basically how you cut your cloth with the money that you have. That's correct. Now, if we go into additional funding, that's a separate conversation, which we then activate by an LTP, or if the community is going to raise all that money on their own.
Yeah. So my question is why do you need to, why is the report say that the library and service centre can't be located in there without triggering an LTP consultation?
Because currently they have a building that they occupy and it's been rated for.
Yeah.
And the moment you disestablish that, it's a change in service and then that activates the LTP.
Yeah, I looked into it. You're not disestablishing the asset. The asset's the library. You're shifting the library. The asset remains intact,
You're shifting the service,
which remains intact.
but that building's associated with it. The moment you disassociate that building with it, because then you're sitting with an empty building.
You're,
which you have to then do
yeah, and
something
this is what I'm getting at is I actually think the memorial hall and the meeting room would stay. You would just have a space that you would have the library and the service centre as a potential option would shift. And you would have a space in that old building, which I could go into the community plan or the community board strategic priorities and pick a number of projects that could go and occupy that space and be their own separate issue that required LTP consultation. That's probably my argument.
Do you want to add a resolution in here that includes the investigation of that, just so it's specific?
Well, I just think we just want to look at every avenue of activation, and I'm concerned that in a small town like Roxburgh, a commercial tenant may not be financially viable if a council lease and so on and so forth. And I guess where I'm coming from is you're going to end up with two buildings in Roxburgh. You're going to end up with a brand new one, a brand new big one, and an older one, a smaller one, and the older, smaller one's going to be the activated one, and your brand new big one's going to be down the road, and you have to go and get the key from the old building to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it, and it'll require community engagement, and they may say, no, don't want any in it, fine.
Yeah.
But I think we've got to entertain it from the outset.
Yeah.
That activation of this building is a key priority.
Cool.
Which I think we've well traversed in Cromwell. With what was going in there, and it ended up with the commercial cafe, the museum, which was already in a council building. I think with option one, we know the parcel of land and the parcel of money.
Yeah.
But then actually what is enabled within that building, it may well be that the community, when the architect or the person goes out to investigate, that they say, we don't want a movies, we'd like a bigger library, or we don't want any of that, we'd like a commercial. I think it's really important that the community have the opportunity to say what goes in that building from the previous building and what they might like to see that is different, because it is a generational opportunity. So I just want to be really clear that if we are going with option one, as per the Teviot Valley Community Board, that those additional clauses do not preclude anything from being investigated as going inside that building on that parcel of land.
And that's where I was getting at with this option one specifically excluding that at the moment, and I want to clarify that.
And the other thing is, if it's going to the community, we want to have a say in that, because we're going to have to try to pull more together. For efficiency, we want to be doing, we want to be leading that as well.
Yeah, it's a council decision at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that scope brief and scope of their document.
Yeah.
Before we go down thousands of dollars being spent on design, it would have to be adopted by the council.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we added C or changed C at the community board.
So that will become receive the report and accept the level of significance, confirms approval to proceed with the design.
Could you bring up the council?
Well, the council ones are old because they didn't have the, so we're probably better to amend these ones and then copy and paste them across.
Do you feel like C covers what you need?
So
That's, I'm pretty happy with that. I just didn't want anything explicitly ruled out from the outset, you know? And as everyone said, the community will decide it once we have drop-ins and design, head into the design path.
directs that all options.
And just out of interest, the timing of all of it, so because we are in the middle of an LTP, we will be setting budgets by the end of this year, knocking those down. If there are any budgetary implications, OPEX, additional CapEx, we would need to know that in time to lock it into the budgets.
Yeah. Which is, to that point, Peter, the moment we see that it's starting to creep outside of the insurance payout, we would have to notify that, because then effectively we might be too late in the piece to amend into the LTP, which means we'd have to either do an annual plan adjustment to get something sorted out. So that's why when we talk about a baseline, that 6.3 million is our baseline.
Well, 6.3 million is the envelope that must be operated within, because I think we have been pretty clear, as we were with the Cromwell Hall. This is the money, and we will need to make that work.
Gareth understands. Thank you, Gareth.
So we really want to be fine in that design process.
That is
I
the
would
council
really
money.
like to see that.
Yes, that doesn't include
Yeah.
any community money.
I would really like to see that design process and who we choose being someone who's going to be able to operate in this space and not come out with a pie in the sky idea.
Brief will be, this is your money.
Yeah.
And unless they come up with this amazing thing that we don't mind as a community fundraising or doing something or amending LTP, then they're going to stay within their constraint.
So one question, if determining this is your money, how do you take into account the likelihood of grant funding and trust funding?
Well, that would come about from a design. We've got to show them something to go, hey, this is what we're looking to build. So I guess we're not even there yet.
Yeah, no, I don't think try doing crystal ball gazing.
No, so it was a genuine question.
Yeah, let's actually go through this process and then we'll come up with the scope.
Yeah.
And then we can start teasing it out.
Sweet.
And once we've clarified that scope, there's then something, for example, the museums obtain funding from Central Lakes Trust who figure fit out. And there may well be the ability for that sort of thing to happen within that facility if it was aligned with what the community were wanting to achieve.
Yeah, and grants could fund specific components of it, like a museum, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, it could be included in the original scope. Well,
it could if they see a
give us in the-
specific thing that they want to achieve.
within the
within
money.
that
I
building.
mean, this is what we want. There's your money. This come up with an idea.
There is also community trust stuff down there that could actually fund specific parts that has not even been thought about yet, so.
But in some cases, building a new facility and having that wide open scope for a start may well be the easiest way to get it done.
That's where they do the information.
Yeah, we've got to go and find out what's. Well, we have a community.
So I've got a question for, I guess, Martin and you, Curtis. The setup of the project steering group, how is that, you guys are happy with how that's all set up and how that all interacts with community board and council?
No, but we've expressed that disappointment with this faction of the process, which we weren't engaged with, and we've been assured that we will going forward. So,
So your internal mechanisms will be, however you want, will be
We're
sorted.
gonna have a meeting, so we might.
I think what they're talking about, that is the project sponsor, that one's on me, making sure that this feedback goes down to the steering group and back up again, so.
Yeah, I guess what I do wonder whether there is a need for you, myself or you to be more of in a chair role or direct what them and relaying to the 4 members of the public, because I do feel the 4 members of the public, and I've been in touch with them, they really a bit of limbo on what and why they're sort of in the group at the moment. Now, part of that's the stage of the project we're at, and I've sort of reassured them that you'll have a why pretty soon once we get into the design and stuff. But yeah, I think there might be a need, and we can discuss to have a.
I'm just thinking along from, from the experience with the Omakau Hub. There's been someone who's been a driver, has rallied the community and has worked really well with council. And I'm just wondering if that's
it's been quite difficult on the lay members of the steering group, because as you're a small community,
exactly what Logan was talking about.
yeah, a lot of sort of like,
I also think it's been a controversial, it's clearly been controversial with location option, so that's
But
why
we've
I'm
kind of
pretty,
gone past
I'm
that.
pretty keen to get some definitive direction, and I think things will smooth out, but I think we probably might have a point person that deals very close with them, with the team,
And that's-
which they've done a good job. with the
that'll be
location.
a conversation that we will have with the rest of the steering group at our meeting, which is planned for early in April, isn't it? Or
Yeah, we said we were going to speak to the council.
council, yeah, they would, yeah, but it's coming up really quickly, yeah.
I think one of the issues that it's been in a state of flux, and we get a bit of direction here today, and we'll get moving, and it'll smooth a lot of things out.
Yeah. And as well as having obviously insurance confirmed just within the last month, there has been a few things.
We didn't know how much money we had until.
And that's been one of the biggest challenges. Now we know the money, we know the location.
Yes.
Hopefully that gives some clarity for going forward, and for clarity's sake, the expectation will be that anything coming to this table has come via the steering group to the TBCB and then up to us. I think we have been made abundantly aware how important this project is to the people of the Teviot Valley, and that they really want to be involved in this process, especially when we start drawing what it might look like on the inside and outside. So we can just.
And to be fair to the group, the staff have been very good and facilitating 2 public meetings that were, one was very well attended and very range of opinions. And the second one reasonably well attended too, less of a range of opinions, but David and his team have been very great after hours facilitating them down the valley in the evening. So thank you to them today. So we have engaged with the community.
I can imagine the community was engaged with you too.
Right, so those that came to the top that council was.
Oh, yeah.
So, for those that can't see, receives the report and accepts the level of significance, confirms approval to proceed with the design and construction of the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre on the existing site as planned, directs that all options for activation of the site are considered as the project progresses, directs that there is a continuous feedback loop with the project steering group and the Teviot Valley Community Board as the design progresses.
Sorry, just one thing. Option B, given what we discussed as we went into the design phase, if it looked like you needed a little change to it.
Scope.
Yeah. Existing site is plain subject to design.
I wouldn't go down.
Okay, right, that was a question. Yeah.
Again, we're going into the crystal ball stuff.
Yeah.
Let's actually get the scope and the brief going.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Should you not actually have within the constraints of the finance available as well in there?
Well, I think it
I
needs to
think-
come back to this table.
Yeah.
It will come back.
Yeah.
By the board.
And
Steering group first.
I don't think the Cromwell Memorial Hall started off at 6 million, didn't it?
Did,
I
Five.
did.
wish list got up 13.
Five.
Watch this space.
Just let you know, Curtis, if
Escalation.
it gets to 45 million, you might have
I
to.
ran on respect for ratepayers, so don't worry. Cut a mic off and I'll be cutting everyone else's spot in the future.
And Tilly doesn't have huge amounts of endowment land they will watch for the rest of the
You
life.
can get a sausage as a going outside.
Yeah.
We've got the largest
Thank
infrastructure.
you. Can I
project
have
in
someone
the
please
country.
to move and second those recommendations? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Bob. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thanks for the precious water too now. The two.
Giles?
Who knows what you'll be building?
We want.
Here we go.
I can tell you what,
Cromwell started with that attitude.
Yeah.
No, maybe.
Look what we got there.
Well, I just had a word with, Wayne.
Yeah.
Because my name's in it, he seems to think it's not a big problem. So is that okay? If I do it? Okay. Alright, so we're up to 26.3.9 on page 139. Notification of Waitaki District Council request to join Southern Waters. And Peter?
Yeah. So this is a culmination of quite a lot of work. We do have some colleagues online, our legal representatives from Win Williams.
Yes, Williams.
Nicola.
Yeah.
And was Bruce going to join us online?
He was, but, didn't go on.
So the chair as well. There is a lot to this. This is essentially taking it forward. The decision of Waitaki District Council to join the Southern Waters Group and the various constitutional documents, the shareholders agreement, constitution, the deed of accession, because it has to be amended. So there's a lot of things. Bruce, when he joins us, we'll have some comments. But what I would say is this has gone through quite a strenuous legal review. It has been adopted by Gore on the 17th. So they were the first council to pass these resolutions and adopt these. We're today, and Boothar is next week. And then depending on what those decisions are, we'll go through the process of responding formally back to Waitaki District Council. But as I say, our legal representatives are online. If you have any questions, I would probably direct them to them. And when Bruce joins us, there'll be a few things that he'll want to say as the establishment chair.
He is attempting to join.
Very
But
chargeable.
some technical difficulties once again.
So is there any questions of Peter Town?
Oh, and there was also that document too about councillors' role in a council controlled organisation, because this is the first time I believe this council has established this. So there was that was shared with all the councillors across the 4 councils, just so those who don't have CCOs, it's a bit of an education because it is new experience for us as a council.
So have the other councils got CCOs that we're,
Waitaki has a holding company, Clutha and Gore. Southland,
oh yeah,
Gore
that's,
has
Southland,
yeah,
Southern Land.
yeah.
so they have some familiarity of a CCO arrangement.
And I think, congratulations to the team who's in order, because this is quite significant. When you look at the new legislation around Three Waters, we're going to be one of the bigger units nationally. And I think we've achieved, I'm going to say against the odds, we've achieved substantial progress and building these partnerships with our neighbours. Council certainly going to be interesting times going forward. And the challenge of the new legislation and for us to get to this point with that many members, the scale it's giving us is hopefully, because I have been fairly cynical about this whole process from day one. It's going to be a pathway to success, I hope.
I think further to what Martin has just said, the three councils, they worked together collaboratively. They had a common goal, and that became very, very obvious. And I think that Waitaki is a really good fit. They have that same, they want, just like the other three councils, want the best for their ratepayer. And I think that when the mayor of Waitaki said that she was wanting to see a genuine partnership, I think that that's exactly what she was going to get. And she knew that. And obviously her fellow councillors agreed with her. And I do think they would be a good fit with Southern Waters. Have you got?
Has anybody got any other managed to get Bruce to join?
No.
Nothing's there. Has anybody got any technical questions for the lawyer?
I had a question, transfer agreement around the staff negotiations for moving across. You talk about, the water services, CCO will, negotiate terms with the staff, respective staff. What happens if the respective staff and the water services entity don't come to terms? Does CODC then liable for a redundancy package for that staff?
Look, I think it's fair to say, staff within the water side of council business, the intent as it currently stands is to pretty much lift them and shift them into the CCO. Those who don't go, their substantive role is no longer here within county. It's gone. And so there would be a redundancy process. So, but we'd have to work our way through.
Fall to CODC.
Yes, for each respective council, because effectively there is no role for someone in council in that the role that they were employed for, because that's.
Well, I guess how do we ensure that the negotiations to accept a new role and is fruitful, so we don't. I'm not saying, and I know that we likelihood is low, but I just want to raise it as something we think about. And
look, this is going to be a significant work stream for Southern Waters, Fiona and her team, and they'll be building that team pretty shortly to start working this. There have been engagement, there's been communications that have gone out to all staff across all four councils, and there's an internal website set up for staff, and that's the stuff we're hosting it at the moment now. So at the moment there is information flow, but look, we have to have faith in the process. We've got some really good people on board to lead this for us. So I'm confident. I mean, as we know, what is it, 4,000, 6,000 staff short across New Zealand for water?
No, that's cool. How would the Southern Waters done well obtain development contributions? How does that mechanism work?
Struggling to hear because I'm sitting behind you.
How would Southern Water done well obtain development contributions?
The same way the council does. So any development contributions reserves that account will transfer. So if it's a positive balance, then money will transfer. If it's a negative balance, then debt will transfer.
Yes, so sorry.
Development contributions the same way the council does. Yeah. And any that have been assessed but not yet paid will get paid to someone.
So who would set those development contributions going forward?
So that it's a bit of a confusing one at the moment because the legislation's changing on how they get set. But the CCO can decide to either take the council's development contribution policy, or they are allowed to set their own development contribution policy. And as part of some preliminary meeting I mentioned earlier, it's likely that the Central Otago District Council development contributions policy will be used initially, because we're the one council in that group of four who is all over development contributions. So we probably need that understanding of that. So I would.
And the development contributions that go with would be ring fence for our.
Well, they have to be anyway.
Yeah, right,
Development contributions, as the law currently stands, have to be applied to the scheme.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
I just think that's so, yes, what verification is they're not going to be spread across all of the councils in within the CCA.
So, I think it might be stated because the legislation's currently being redrafted. So what it is in the future, I don't know, but actually legislation currently stands. Development contributions that apply to the Cromwell scheme have to stay on the Cromwell scheme. They can't be, and even Alexandra least of all Belfast.
So they can set development contributions across the whole entity and it wouldn't necessarily be disproportionately right. It could be, they could have a figure or 102% of the cost or 120% of the cost. But yet we could have infrastructure which we've done that won't be up for redevelopment.
No, they can't do that because there's methodologies on how you have to calculate development contributions or levies that are based on some investment that's required to service growth. So you can't say when we have a project in the plan, in the 10-year plan, we have to allocate a proportion of that project to renewal, to level of service improvement and to growth. And a development contribution only covers the growth component. So you can't charge a developer for replacing an existing asset. You can only charge them for
What I guess I'm getting at is we'd argue we haven't charged enough for development contributions in the last 10 years. And how do they say that they're going to get that figure right? Because if the growth came to Central Otago and there's none in Waitaki and none in Gore, then it's a whole lot of, they've got to get the methodology that we may have not got right. How they expect to set a new entity up to get right, I guess I'm saying.
So that is one of the reasons why the legislation's changing, so that it can build in those things. I mean, the government and the DIA have become immensely aware that councils that are dealing with high growth have more of a challenge than everyone else around us. And the things that have contributed to us undercharging is we set our development contributions at the time that we set our 10-year plan. And then a year later, there's a global shock that increases prices. And we're not agile enough to respond to that. It takes another 3 or 4 years before we change the DC.
That's happening now too.
Yeah, so these things they can do, they can go to annual reviews instead of 3 yearly reviews, and that's a lesson we've learned. And then there's things that the government is changing in the legislation, so they can charge on interest costs in the period between consent being granted and the development contribution being paid. So, for example, say Bulldenhogan's bus track, if we assess their DC at application stage, we might do that now, but it could be 10 years before they actually pay their last development contributions. And in the meantime, we've had to fund the infrastructure upgrades and carry out interest costs on those. So there's different changes coming to the legislation to address those inequities that occur in the process.
So we've got Bruce online. Has anybody got any questions for Bruce?
I had a question in the initial statement of expectations, you talk about local pricing. How long do you envisage continuing to have that as an expectation?
Did you get that one, Bruce? So in the statement of expectation, it talks about local pricing for the initial period. Is there any indication of how long local pricing might be in place?
Yes, the local pricing and mission statement or the mission is to be no worse off than an in-house business model, go hand in hand. So how do we ensure that that is essentially local pricing is fit for purpose as long as it can be? Because that means that you solve that problem with being no worse off than an in-house business model. So if you go to common pricing, then you're going to get cross subsidization between the regions, and some people could end up worse off, theoretically.
I guess if you didn't get that, Bruce, I'm going to summarise somewhat. How will you ensure that idea around nobody being worse off than they would have been under a local model? How do you ensure that local pricing mechanism remains fit for purpose down the track? Or how do you assess its relativity to the area that it's servicing?
It's an interesting question, Tamer, and interestingly enough, we're dealing with it a little bit at Selwyn at the moment. The reality of it is that as we get further down the track, it's going to become more difficult to understand whether or not you would have been better off or worse off. The reality of it is that pricing and rates will separate over time, but in the initial instance, we can gauge it against what was structured last year and add in a reasonable charge. So there is a comparative on a local basis that the company will be aware of and will be able to compare it against. In relation to it might be in the immediate or even medium future, depending on the debt we carry.
One last question. You touched on it just then, Bruce, around existing debt being allocated to the respective regions or councils and charged for accordingly. How will the new borrowings be apportioned? Will it be, so I suppose, districtised across the entity, or will, like for like, will new borrowing be allocated for the specific water users of that area where the new borrowing is required, or how will that look?
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Isn't that question mean that it's cross subsidisation of debt?
Every council was bringing in their own debt and paying for the debt that we currently hold, but the whole purpose of having an entity that covers multiple areas is that the entity will hold the debt.
It holds the debt, but the liability of the debt
can be
across the district.
Yeah.
So it's just this entity.
Councillor
They take that comment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, so they put it back to.
Did you have something you wanted to say? No? Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to move
all of them.
All of them?
Yep. So that's A to O. Can I have a seconder?
We're going to read it.
Yeah, Andrew. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you, Bruce.
We'll go to the fire.
That's us. And Cash, no? All carried. We're in. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. So you turn now to page 277, 26.3.10, status report, Three Waters capital projects. Welcome.
Right, afternoon, everyone. I'll take the report as read it. It's just status report for information, so there's no, nothing you have to approve or sign off, particularly for the new council. If you haven't seen these before, these are just sort of, every second council meeting we do status reports on the sort of gauge of project, do the rest of what's going on and sort of improve the overall transparency of what we're doing.
And so we will be coming to council with an outline of the next, where we've got to this year in the next 12 months capital program, because the reports that Patrick's team produces are for the large projects, but we have a lot of smaller projects, and sometimes collectively underspends on a lot of projects can be as impactful as building up a larger project. So we've heard your concerns around the works delivery, and we'll be giving you some additional reporting around the wider. This is what I'm until we get into transition.
So have you got any questions for Patrick and Julie? All good. So do I have, so the recommendation is that report be received and its contents noted. Do I have a mover and seconder? Martin and Bob. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Yeah, I thought you'd have more questions for me, sure.
Everybody was happy with you.
Yeah, so those reports are really good. Oh, good, yeah. Good. There's a little bit of a lag in them, so we are sort of advancing things as they go, so yeah, probably the critical things we've got at the moment is Cromwell with the switch over when we do the bypass to do the hook everything up. Yeah.
Most projects under budget.
Well, that's Julie's problem now because we've got more money than we can spend.
Yeah. Did you ever look down
The
at
count might
the
be.
treatment plant down here for the waterway that we put them into? There's probably just depression in the ground.
Just touch the land.
I can take you down and show you if you want.
I know where it is.
Good. Oh, that's good.
Thanks, Cheryl. Our next item is a little bit longer, so we will break slightly early for lunch, and come back at 1 o'clock, please.
Excellent. Marvellous.
Marvellous.
Marvellous.